You're listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast, the show with a light-hearted look at the eventing world, all of the big event previews, reviews, and special guests, and of course, backed up with all of the key Echo Ratings stats. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. And this weekend, it was the first Nations Cup of 2020 as Haras ran in France. And Catherine and me, and we are just going to give you a very, very quick review, listeners, because we did a preview show last week and we looked at a few of the key contenders and we thought it might be nice to revisit with a little bit of a brief review show as well. So Catherine, it was a very, very impressive field going to France this weekend, and I think it lived up to expectations.
Yes, it did, and not necessarily the expectations that we all had, to be honest. I mean, the French, unsurprisingly, went brilliantly, as we anticipated that they would.
I did say, I did very intelligently point out on the preview show that the French were out in force in France. I mean,
They were, Nicole. You were right.
They were. They took the top 5 places and they absolutely wiped the floor in the Nations Cup. They won it by. So I can say that they stuck to it, but even so, wasn't my finest moment. But no, the French absolutely dominated. And actually, Thibaut Villette, King de Brio, who we spoke about on the preview, I'm not sure if he was going to put his foot down for the cross country. The horse is often saved for the big occasions. He is a real championship stalwart for Team France. He actually did put his foot down, just to prove us wrong. And he was flawless in the 3 phases, just picked up a couple of seconds over the time. And he won. And it was Thibaut's first international victory, Catherine, which I find amazing. I mean, he burst onto the scene at Blair back in 2015 with this horse at something like 15 internationals. And he was going through Europeans and winning an individual medal. But it was his first ever international victory.
I know, that's a surprise, isn't it? And we know this horse so well. And what a super horse he is. He's beautiful to watch. Very, very talented. And Thibaut runs him as he thinks is appropriate and sensible, with a focus on championship performances. And maybe because there isn't one of those this year, he's running him slightly differently. But no one can doubt that the quality of this combination and the longevity, and to have kept this horse at the top level and performing so well for such a long time, I think is very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a feeling, I mean, the horse is, I think, he is 16 this year, so he'll be 17 next year when it goes to, obviously, Tokyo 2021 as it is now. And I know the French team would very much be hoping that he will be sort of leading their campaign. So it was a real delight to see him. And he is one of the most beautiful, beautiful horses, as you say. And listeners, if you haven't seen any of the action in Haras, you can actually go back on YouTube, search for the live stream, and you can watch both the show jumping and the cross country as well. So you can go back and actually relive some of the action. Who finished in second? It was Thomas Carlyle and Bermain, who, Catherine, I think you flagged up the one that is just absolutely beautiful. And it's really nice to see Tom with another top sort of class horse. She was top 10 at Buccleuch last year. She won at Jardy on her debut this year. She's been top 15 at Blenheim in the 8 and 9-year-olds. That this is going to be his next championship horse.
Yes, let's hope so. She's as special as we thought she was, and she certainly proved it here. Tom was on great form. She's lovely. She's very, very well bred. She's very classy. She doesn't appear to have a weakness. And, she's at the other end of the spectrum to King de Brio. She is the future, really.
Yeah, she's only a 9-year-old this time. So she's one of the horses that I would say Tokyo being delayed for a year would suit her. She'd have another year under her belt, should be a year older, she'll have had a few more events. She might get, she probably will get another long format run under her belt as well. And that I think would benefit her. And I think Tom will be delighted with it. And so he should be. Now, I have to admit, I think I've peaked. When we pick our podiums, it is very rare that we all get 3 people in a, that do well. And I picked what I thought was a fairly sort of wild podium. And they didn't all finish on the podium, but I got third, fourth, and fifth, which is probably the best I've ever done. I don't think they were in order. I don't think they were in the order that I put them in. But even so, because Christopher Six, Totem de Pressy were fourth, and they were actually fourth at the Europeans last year. And again, one of the young French combinations building towards Tokyo. And then Karim Leguargue and Triton Fontaine, who finished in fifth. And again, I think they were separated on show jumping time. Because they finished on the same score, Chris and Karim. So yeah, I will take that. And it was French domination, as we've said. All four of their team members were inside the top five State Nations Cup. Fisher Chipmunk, Catherine, Michael Young finished in sixth, but he did have an expensive show jumping round.
He did, having made this stunning start and doing a 19.7 dressage. You thought he was running away with it. Oh, there we go. Michael Young wins again. But 2 fences down and a time fault. It's interesting. We know how amazing this combination are, but there is a weakness. And this horse can have a show jump down. And you've always got to keep that in the back of your mind, haven't you, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't sure they were going to run quickly cross country, as we said on the preview show, because they ran quickly in Stragom. He didn't go totally flat out for the time, but he was a very quick round. You can never discount Mickey's magic in the show jumping with this horse when the day is there. And but it does still just remind you that even though that dressage is so impressive, there is perhaps a chink in the armour.
Yeah, it just adds a little bit of uncertainty, doesn't it?
Adds a little bit of drama, doesn't it? We know it just gives a bit more excitement. But 19.7 sees them sub 20, 2 tests on the trot. So impressive in that first phase. Richard Cascus had a super ride and had an 8th place finish. He just picked up a few time penalties across the jumping phases, but fair play to him. He was best of the Brits in 8th. Who were the other one that I should mention as well? Michael Young actually had Fisher Rakana, which was brilliant to see. So enjoying life. She looked to be in super form. But there were a few shocks, Catherine, as well. I think the one that stands out that I think will be disappointing would be Janelle Price having 20 penalties on McLaren. But a lot to take positive-wise with that horse, because his show jumping in particular was exceptional, and he did do a sub-30 dressage, and they're still getting to know each other.
Yes, I mean, there was a photo on social media that Janelle posted of the little horse jumping a show jump, and it was feet above it. And I'm not exaggerating; it's extraordinary, the horse's ability. And I think, look, they had a run out. It was the last part of a combination, sort of. I think it was 9C or something like that. They're getting to know each other. They haven't had a huge amount of time together. These things happen. I wouldn't have thought that Janelle's too upset. I think that they know what they've got to do and where they've got to go. But just watching them gives you so much pleasure, doesn't it? Because this wonderful little horse with this extraordinary action in front. And yeah, they're pretty cool.
I suppose from the disappointment perspective, it could have been a top 5 finish, and it could have been a very different story without that 20 penalties. But he is literally the coolest little horse. And if you haven't seen that picture on Facebook that Catherine's talking about, go and find it, because you will fall in love with him. He is such a class little character, and he is giving it absolute mile of clearance. Who else would be worth noting? Wesco had a good run, sort of had a couple of poles down in the show jumping, which is a little bit uncharacteristic, and then a steady run cross country, but good to see him back. And also the Jefferson 18 horse of Chris Burton's looks really talented. He was very, very well placed after the dressage and show jumping. There were very, very few show jumping rounds that were clear, actually, and was sort of in the top 5, I think, going out onto the cross country. Had a fairly green, and then obviously had plenty of time penalties as they sort of took their time getting home. But a really, really nice horse for him for the future to definitely look out for. But
yes. Do you know that the actor Martin Clunes is one of the owners of that horse?
Yes, and with his wife. When I saw Martin Clunes, I was like, is it the Martin Clunes? And it is. So Haras this weekend was full of top names. The French ran away with the Nations Cup. I think who finished second, Catherine? Was it the Netherlands?
The Netherlands, yes, with some interesting younger horses and some new combinations that we're worth keeping an eye on. No, they did well. I mean, they were well behind the French, but they were in second and they were ahead of the Brits, who were in third. And I think that the slightly disappointing thing about the Brits was Zara Tindall's run out with Class Affair, because that is such a cool horse, such a classy horse. It has all the talent in the world. It just sometimes seems to get a little idea in its head and does something it's not supposed to. And when all those pieces are put together, it'll be a winner.
Yeah, and it would be so lovely to see her back at top level as well. It really, really would. And have another sort of horse that she could challenge for potential championship teams. So keep an eye on them for the future. But Haras was lots and lots of fun with lots of very, very good combinations out, listeners. So we hope you've enjoyed our little rundown of how it unfolded and that there are a few combinations in there to watch for the rest of the season. And stay tuned because we will have a Bergam preview show out for you tomorrow. So that will be on Wednesday because Bergam will be out this weekend. And breaking news, little birdie, you heard it here first, there might be an eventing manager game that you can get involved with because the first eventing manager game on real life competition will be taking place at Bergam this weekend. If you haven't got eventing manager, it is basically fantasy football for eventing. You can download the app for free in your App Store or Google Play, and you can play along and pick your fantasy team. There's on that on the Bergam preview show, but we hope that you will get involved and play along as well. Catherine, thank you. It has been good to look back at Haras.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's exciting that we've got real live sport happening again. The simulations have been such fun, but it's great that we've got real sport.
Yeah, there's no substitute, is there? At the end of the day, we love nations, have been great fun, but it is good to be back. Listeners, we have lots coming up for you on the podcast, so do stay tuned. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Catherine, thank you for joining me. We'll be back very soon. Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast. This podcast is available for free on iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or wherever you usually listen to your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Find us at eventingpodcast.com or search Eventing Podcast on social media.